Welcome back, listeners, to Learning from Friends. My name is Kate Curtis, your tour guide on this lovely adventure, and I look forward to being able to share this experience with you today. For those that are their first time here with us, welcome. Glad to have you. You've chose a great episode to jump in on here. For those that are back, glad to have you. Continue coming back and checking out some of our episodes to it. And as those that are familiar, have been coming in and listening off and on with us here, I do my mom's quote of the day to start the podcast. Mom, take it away.
Today's quote is from Lori Fay. Butterflies can't see their wings. They can't see how truly beautiful they are, but others can. People are like that too.
Thanks, Mom. Great quote, as usual, getting us starting off to a good tempo for the episode. So with today's topic, as we jump in here, I'm excited because I just got starting into doing this less than a year ago. And I'm excited to sit down with my friend Kalevi talking about role-playing. I just got into a D&D campaign as a basic level, and we are going through it. I'm learning all this different lingo, learning all this different stuff as we're going along. And today, Kalevi is going to give us a very good background knowledge for those that have no clue kind of what's going on within this world of role-playing and Dungeons and Dragons. And for those that have, per se, been going through for a while and just tuned into the episode because you saw the title here, I hope we serve you justice on doing so. Kalevi, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks so much, Cade.
So, Kalevi, how do we know each other?
Well, I just happen to be your best friend's husband. So, I mean, in a way, I had to stop myself from calling you my brother-in-law, but it may as well be the case, right?
You know, it really should be, because Garrus and I have known each other since birth. Parents taught with each other, and so yeah, a brother-in-law makes logical sense to me. I think that's fair, because your family, you're born with one family by blood, but the other one you choose. So I think that's a fair judgment.
Exactly.
I feel honored that we could share that moment there. I feel like it was a good bonding moment there. With that kind of in mind here, there's like probably about 2 to 5% that know who you are. Can you give us like a background of who is Kalevi? What would be on your Wikipedia page if someone or I wrote it and knew a little bit about you, or say Garrison sat down and wrote it? What would it look like?
Well, I guess it depends on how much we want to dive in. Do we want like my whole life story here or something, or just just highlights here and there?
Let's go with like the little introductory section where it's like a summary, kind of like overview kind of deal.
Cool. All right. Well, let's see. I'm about 30 something right now. I've managed to land myself in Des Moines, Iowa, of all places, to settle down. Been here almost a decade, and I can't believe it. But it's a nice little place to be. And what else would you know on my Wikipedia? I went to school for music. I'm still a bassoonist primarily, but I do a whole bunch of. I'm all over the woodwind world, to be quite honest. I'm super involved in the church world as well, which of course naturally is the church music world for me too. It's not unusual to hear me playing or singing in some ensemble or by myself. If you come to my church on a Sunday evening or Sunday morning, excuse me, or any other time, I also find myself I'm kind of like an artisanal handy. I like doing a bunch of baking. I do a bunch of other craft type stuff too. Like soap making is something I've been doing ever since the plague started.
Dude, your soaps are awesome, by the way. I definitely need to like get back I need to purchase some from you again.
Well, thanks. I actually need to make some more. It's been a little while since I've even touched it. So not for really anything other than just it hasn't crossed my mind. It stays in the basement, so my cat doesn't get into it, and I forget about it sometimes.
As long as your cat's not actually like eating it, then I think we're pretty good. Good.
Yeah.
You now have what? 3 cats? 2 cats? There's
just the one, actually.
Just the one. My brain keeps spacing between. We've got so many friends that have cats, and it's just like Chris has 3. I've got 2, and it's all the rotation here of cat dads that is just trying to keep up with them all. I think that's a very important thing to have on your page too. Your cat dad, very important.
Yep. I'd agree with that too.
Yeah, and I know that I forgot to mention this at the beginning, so that's why I'm saying it now. Thank you, Zoom, for having like we can do this kind of stuff. Because if you're in Des Moines, I'm sitting down in my basement and recording. This is actually the first time I've ever recorded in my basement. Usually I'm sitting up at my kitchen table, so this is definitely different for me. So thank you, Zoom, and for being able to connect Des Moines, Iowa to Canton, Georgia. So huzzah. Give us a sponsorship. Come on. I need some donation from Zoom to kind of promote that out here. So I'll take it. Whatever at the end of the day. So going into this whole world of role playing, this is a totally interesting realm that's been around for a while, for decades. And it kind of, I started to think like it got a really big resurgence with Dungeons and Dragons, but definitely with Stranger Things. I think that boosted a lot more people out there. But also before that, you saw a lot of movies were starting to represent that were from the 80s and 90s, were always having the little cult classic kind of following the background. And I really overall think that now, especially when COVID hit, or as you know, the plague, as we're going to call it, I feel like that boosted up it as well of the kind of that role playing kind of atmosphere for it. There is so many misconceptions about role playing. And for most of you, get your mind out of the gutters. I'm going to go and say that right now. This is not that kind of podcast. So this is not sexual. So no, stop it. Get your mind out of the gutter.
It isn't weird until you make it weird, after all, right?
This is true. So clear up some misconceptions for me about role playing in general.
All right. Well, of course, the first one that always comes to my mind when we talk about things like roleplay, Dungeons and Dragons, and everything is, of course, like the satanic panic comes straight to my mind.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna tell you one thing right off the top of the bat here. It's like, if you think we're here in some kind of like conspiracy to summon Satan into the land or something like that, I mean, you'd better just keep in mind that half of us are double checking ourselves half the time on like what 2 + 2 is in the middle of a game, or can't even keep track, have so much trouble keeping track of like just basic numbers and other things like that. If we're having trouble with that, how on earth are we going to do something like that, even if we wanted to, which we don't for the most part?
That is very, very true. The numbers, oh my gosh, trying to keep up with all that. Thank you for what's the app? Dungeon or Beyond? D&D
Oh, D&D
Beyond?
Beyond. Yeah.
Thank you for keeping up with all the numbers for me. That if it wasn't for that, gosh, that'd be chaotic. And it's not like a dungeon, like being trapped down in someone's basement and not being able to leave out here. We're not, doing anything extremely bad to you, minus having to use your mind a lot and being creative. So definitely goes a long way with that. It doesn't come with a satanic Bible inside every single book that you get. It doesn't. So just for those that are thinking that, sorry, not here.
Nope. And then of course, the other thing too is like, it's like, you think we're here summoning Satan? Oh, come on. We're just trying to get the person playing the bard to stop trying to seduce the dragon.
Oh gosh, that's true. There may be some demons that we're killing along the way, but
yeah, actually.
So that's a true statement, but we're not trying to like bring them into real life. We're trying to bring them into the game, which we'll get into a lot of those terms here in a little bit. But there's a lot of vocabulary that I will say took me a while to pick up on and get used to. Is there any jargon that you're going to potentially use throughout the episode that you want to just go ahead and throw out there just to give someone a background as they continue to listen to go, okay, here's something that we're just going to go ahead and introduce. We're not going to repeat it again of how to define it. So
yeah.
What do we got?
There's going to be a few that I'm probably going to not think about on the top end here, so I'll have to define as we go along. But I mean, as far as like general terms that I'll probably be saying a lot, if I say like DM or GM, that's Dungeon Master or Game Master, I think there's some sort of copyright difference between the two. I'm not even sure what it is, but in any case, they're functionally the same thing. Or some game systems will say storyteller, but my preferred term for the most part is DM, and that's just the Dungeon Master. That's just that's basically the person who's moderating the whole game. Like they're filling in the role of any non-player characters that like the players are all encountering, or they take the role of any monsters or any enemies that the player characters might be facing off against. They're basically they're the ones who make the game world run. So that's a DM. If I say PC at all or what have you, what I mean by that is player character, just literally the character that the player has created and is controlling in the game. If I say anything like, say, natural 20, this will probably come up. So this Dungeons and Dragons is primarily based on it using a 20-sided die. A D20 is what we call a 20-sided die. If I say natural 20, it means you rolled the dice and it came up on a 20, and that's the maximum roll. So that's a very good thing. Conversely, natural one, that's the lowest roll you can get, and usually that's associated with something bad happening, since it's the lowest result you can get. Kate, is there anything else you think of I should address right off? Or
right off the bat, I think that hits it pretty well. Just in general, using those little terms that are going to come up. I'm sure as we'll go along, if there's something that's there, I'll go, hey, what is that again? Or what is this? But I think we'll be pretty fine because I'm very, very minimally basic on knowledge. So I'm sure if something comes there, I'll stop us to make sure.
Sure.
If we have that.
And I don't think we're going to get too far into the nuts and bolts of the actual game, of any of the actual games, actually, while we're having a conversation. But you never know. If it comes up, I'll talk about it.
True. And that's, again, learning from friends. That's the whole point here. We're not, this is not the master's level of going into it that we're trying to attract everyone within the D&D world and stuff like that. It's just a basic overview for the casual fan. Like, my mom and dad are going to listen to this and they're going to be like, I have no idea what's happening, but you know what? I'm going to listen because my parents are awesome. Love mom and dad. Hey, mom. Hey, dad. How you doing? Thanks for listening. But so that's dive into here real quick on what defines role-playing games.
Well, this is going to sound real facile, but I think what defines a role-playing game is the fact that it's a game that relies on role-playing. But but just to get into that a little bit more. So when I say when we're talking about role-playing here, we're talking about getting outside of your own head, your own experience, your own knowledge, and everything, and experiencing kind of honestly, it's a big like collaborative storytelling game in my view. Like you and your dungeon master and your party have all come together, and you have kind of a world that you've agreed on playing in, and the rules are kind of like your agreements on the rule on how the world works, and then from there you're just making a character. Basically, like, it could be an avatar of yourself, or it could just be just something else entirely, like a role that you want to play, like say on the stage or what have you, but you're just playing it at a table with your friends, or online with your friends. That's basically all it is, I think. Like, that's role playing. Like, you're getting outside of yourself, you're getting yourself into new perspectives, you're using your imagination to explore a whole bunch of other things that you wouldn't ever be able to do in real life.
That's a good point. You're using your mind to be creative here. And that's one thing that at the end of the day, that getting into it, you really have to think, and you have to put yourself out there and to try all these different things and all these different thought processes. And with that, what you say and what you do will affect how the game goes forward, whether it's going in a positive direction, a negative direction. What you say leads on it. It's not like a B, C, kind of like this is the step process to have to get through it. There's a wide variety of ways. Like, choose your own way through books. Yep. Love those.
Yep. Back in the day. It's just like we say, in character actions and character consequences, just like in real life. If you decide to punch the barkeep in the face, you should expect the barkeep to scream at you and throw you out. Things still follow logic. You just got to keep going with it.
True. Well played. Are there different types of genres kind of within role playing, or is this kind of just a general catch-all?
I'd say that yes and no. I mean, as far as like the actual concept of role play itself and everything, I think it's pretty basic across the board. What you're doing, although some games or some even like either some game systems or just some games run by different groups might have emphasis on different things. Like, some groups might be more on the storytelling. Other groups might just want to get together and charge through a dungeon and kill a dragon at the end. But as far as any like genres go or anything, it's kind of limited only by the imagination of the people playing it. There are, I mean, of course, the most famous one I'd say, like Dungeons and Dragons, of course, is kind of that medieval-ish high fantasy sort of thing, like that Lord of the Rings type world and everything. You have other things out there though, like there have been adaptations of the game for like say a Star Wars setting, or there's also there's a companion game sort of to D&D called, I mean, Pathfinder. The same company Paizo also produces a game like called Starfinder, which is about the same. Like it's the idea. Like disclaimer here, I'm not overly familiar with Starfinder itself, but it's, I mean, a very simplistic way I can think of to describe that is like D&D in space. There's other games too. Yeah,
Ooh,
there's other games too, like say Shadowrun or games like that, or like say any of the White Wolf games, like Vampire the Masquerade being probably, I think, the most famous one I can think of. Like you're playing in kind of a real world analog or what have you with strong supernatural elements. All that to say, like when it comes to anything, roleplay is really what you make it, and there's a ton of games out there that suit almost any setting that you can think of. And if there isn't anything out there, you can always adapt a setting to whatever game system you want to use.
There we go. I like that. That's a very good overarching explain. And you did throw in a bunch of different types of companies and things that are out there that are doing a variety of different things because of that's the point of competition. It drives the creativity as much as you said, as far as the mind can go. Now, earlier you mentioned about Dungeon Master, Game Master. What is their role when it comes to doing the campaign?
Well, I think the primary role is what I was talking about before. Like they're in charge of playing the world, if you want to think of it that way. All the players themselves are basically, for the most part, only in control of their own characters, their own player characters, and as they play about. But the dungeon master basically has to play everything and everyone else, which could range from like the big scary dragon that you need to go face down, or like the barmaid who might be flirting with you, or might just be picking something out of her teeth, you're not sure, or even that big rushing river that you need to get across without falling in and getting swept away by the current. Like the dungeon master is literally playing the world, so it generally does fall to them to if not create the entire world, then at least to decide how the world is going to function in agreement with the players, or come up with story beats on their own. When I say story beats, I'm not saying that there's a predefined story that everyone needs to play through and get through. I'm just it's more that there are, generally speaking, like options that the players can explore, or certain points that the players might reach, at which point something else happens in the world. Basically, again, I'd sum that up as they are responsible for playing the world. Generally speaking, they're also considered to be the leader of any given playing group, so they might be in charge of proposing what to play, or helping schedule games or what have you. But a lot of this does depend on group to group. But the main thing that's still sticking with everything is that the DMs are playing the world.
There we go. Fair play. Great good overview there for that one. We got lucky right now in doing this one. The Lost Mines of Phandalin. Phandelver. Man, Chris is gonna kill me whenever he hears that. He's like, "Oh, really? We've been playing this for close to a year, and you're still missaying it." Gosh, but yeah, he's been a great DM for us. He's been awesome at it, and he's a great actor too in general. I'm hoping eventually that I get to see you in action, Kalevi, on running one for us. I didn't get to do the one shot that you did the other day, so maybe one day I'll catch one with you. Within the games, there's the classes and there's the archetypes. Can you just give me like something brief overview? Because you can spend hours talking about the different classes and the different archetypes.
Yeah, sure. So first off, another disclaimer. I'm going to go ahead and stick to Dungeons and Dragons here. Like, there are other game systems, obviously. And probably like the big one that other people might know right now, Pathfinder. There's a rich trove of things to find in there, and its lore and everything. And if you're interested in that game, I encourage you to go check that out too. But Beings as D&D is really our main and game that Kate and I play together. That's what I'm going to stick with for now. But yeah, so as far as like what are the classes and everything, that's so when you're choosing a class for a player character, so the idea in Dungeons and Dragons is the player character you're playing is basically an adventurer going out into the world and doing adventure type things. As for why you're doing what you're doing, or perhaps even exactly what you're personally doing, that's up to you to decide. You talk with the dungeon master, and tell them what you think about this, and then the two of you make it happen. But as far as the classes, that's kind of like, you could think of it as kind of like your job in combat, for lack of a better word. Granted, it doesn't always come into combat all the time, but that's kind of the best. I think that's kind of the way it was built in the first place. And so that vestige is still very much there. So, I mean, you'll hear things like, say, fighter, which is kind of what it sounds like. You're you're the one who's responsible for going and dishing out all the damage. You might, of course, heard about, like, say, a wizard who's mostly responsible for casting all the spells and blasting everyone with fireballs, which might include your own party if you're not careful. You might have heard about clerics. Like, they are best known for being the ones to help keep your party healthy and up on their health, their hit points and stuff. But they can also shoot a knight's guiding bolt at you if you're not careful, and do a good amount of damage if they need to. Those are just a few examples. Like, did you want me to get into like just like a one sentence overview of all the rest?
No, you don't have to at all. I just wanted to kind of just have that brief little overview of saying, hey, look, this is kind of what you're doing when you're choosing a class.
Okay, yeah, and
That's
I mean,
about it.
so yeah, like all of your options are like laid out there in the basic in the rule book and such. Which, I mean, the basic rules should be, well, officially available on D&D Beyond for everyone to view, like just the basic official rules. But there are multiple other sources you can find these through, including, of course, the official D&D Player's Handbook, and such.
Yeah, thank you, D&D Beyond, for helping teach me how to do this kind of stuff, because I had no idea for the longest of time, and still learning every moment. But I think that's a good thing. That's the part of life. If you're not busy learning something, what are you doing here?
Yeah,
you got to be learning.
Oh,
you got to be. Now, how long
no,
can?
no,
Sorry,
no, that's
my
fine.
bad.
That's fine. I just realized you asked me about like archetypes or like that kind of stuff too, and I didn't get into that.
You're right. I did.
Yeah. So
Thank
another
you.
just a quick thing to clear up, like, so archetype does mean something specific in the Pathfinder system. For anybody who's listening who's familiar with that, like I said, I won't be getting into that. It's not quite the same thing as what we're using it to mean here, though. So what we would, so generally speaking, in D&D 5th edition, we would also be calling them subclasses. It's kind of like your, what's the easiest way I can think to describe it? It's kind of like, so if you have the class of, like, say, a wizard, it's a subclass is kind of like, well, what type of wizard are you? Like, do you specialize in like evocation spells, which are like the big fireballs or like shooting beams of power and things? Or do you maybe specialize in illusion magic? Like, do you make images to distract your enemies, or bamboozle the people you're trying to deal with? Or maybe you do divination, like you like to take that peek into the future and use it to help you and your allies get the advantage. Basically, it's like it takes the basic idea of the class and it kind of expands it a little bit into something else that you might be able to customize further into whatever character you're trying to write for it.
I'm glad you used the word bamboozle.
It's a good word, and we don't use it enough.
It's a great word. We don't. I had one last podcast was flippity gibbet. I was like, I'd never heard of this word. This is awesome. I'm like, there's, whenever you get to use words like that, like cattywampus. I like the word cattywampus. That's another one. Whenever you can get a new word, that's always just fun and interesting. Roll with it. Now, how
flippity gibbet?
No,
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you on that one. It's just like that just always makes me think of like the Sound of Music, of course. Like, how do you solve a problem like Maria? Like,
Katie did the same thing. Whenever I came back and was talking about that, and she was just like, she jumped into Sound of Music as well. So
it's a clown.
There you go. All the little fun stuff out there, the little connections of words. And I've never been a big musical person, but Garrison has made me watch that thing growing up like probably 10, 15 times. And it's probably his fault why I don't like musicals. I'm going to blame Garrison. So it's easier just to blame him. Gee, it's your fault.
Always.
So this is why my wife doesn't
Gosh
like,
darn it.
what she's like, oh, let's watch this. And I'm like, I'll pass. I'll pass. I will admit, I did enjoy when they did Sweeney Todd. That one, I like Sweeney Todd. There's a couple here and there that I'll allow it to happen. So going back, let's jump backwards. Side tangents. I love side tangents. Those are fun.
Yeah,
but they can sometimes lead down in other different directions. Now, campaigns. A minute ago, I used the word one shot, and as well for a short campaign. How long can campaigns be?
Well, they can. You can't even really define that, I'd say. Most campaigns are designed to last for perhaps several sessions or what have you, but that said, everyone does scheduling different. Some people out there, like, gosh darn it, I don't know how on earth you do this, like play almost every day with the same group or on the same game.
That's intense.
Yeah, I can't. I mean, I'm just like, who has time for that? I mean, I wouldn't mind doing that, but that's also like, I don't have time for that. In other groups,
we have jobs
and other things you want to do with your life. But in other groups, like, I mean, I'm in a group that has generally found that we can really only get together once a month, if that. So, funny enough, that group is playing the same game we are, Lost Minds of Phandelver. And it's taken us since
cool.
It's taken us since maybe sometime in 2019 until just a week or two ago to actually finish that game. Partially,
no spoilers.
Nope,
you can't spoil it for me.
Oh no, we're fine on that. But I mean, all that to say, that group is playing that long. Like I have another group. We are going through the module, Curse of Strahd, probably one of the best known modules in D&D 5th edition. If you like vampire or gothic horror stories, that's absolutely the one for you. But we started playing that about election night 2020 or so, and we're only just about to finish it now. We've been playing roughly every week or so, once a week. And all that, and we're also getting ready to move on to a different game after we're done with that. So I mean, it's like the campaign is done, but the group is definitely not done playing. We've had another game that was running for a similar amount of time. We finished it sometime, like I'd say middle of last year. It's an entirely homebrew game, and then we've started up another game, and we're right in the middle of that right now.
Nice. So it's, as we originally said, it's up to the mind's imagination of how far and how fast you can be able to move.
And unfortunately, on the scheduling, real life has a lot to say. Also, scheduling,
it does, especially when you have a lot of people involved.
I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that 9 times out of 10, the reason a game or a campaign or a group has to come to an end is because of freaking scheduling.
Yeah, we've been lucky that we typically get about maybe every 2 weeks that we get together, or sometimes every week, once a week. But yeah, we went from Saturdays to now moving to Fridays, and we'll see how that holds up at long term. One last question about some of like the details of the nitty gritty of the games before I want to hear your story and your background. Why in the world is it a 20-sided die?
I don't actually know that myself. I'd have to dive into the really early editions of this in the 80s to probably get a good idea of this. But I mean, honestly, I don't even know that I could find anything there, or if there's anything much of substance. The only thing I can think of is that it does offer a lot more gradation. Because I mean, of course, we're all familiar with a 6-sided die, like the stuff that comes in your Monopoly box and everything. Like, if I had to venture a guess, I'd say the main thing that like a 20-sided die has over a 6-sided die when it comes to a game like this is if you're leaving something up to chance, like you might want to leave a lot more room for like gradation, as far as like, okay, did this work or just barely, or did you knock this out of the park with that nat 20 that you rolled, or did you absolutely fall on your face with that natural one, or did you just kind of like chuck that did you kind of shoot that arrow at that target and kind of just miss the target entirely ever so slightly, like with like maybe just like I don't know, like a 9 on the dice or something. It's basically just like you have a lot. I mean, there's a lot more there's a lot more levels in between extremes on a 20-sided die. So I mean, I get if I had to hazard a guess, I think that I'd say that's probably why they went with that.
I'll allow it. Judge Mills Lane. That works. Now the second part of that question, because my brain just remembered it. There are what 3 or 4 or 5 different there's the 6-sided die, there's the 4-sided die, there's the 20 is like what are the different how many different sets are there whenever you get into the game?
In theory, I think you can make any size die almost any size die you would want to ever. But as far as what's commonly used, or at least what's used in the rule set of like D&D 5th edition. So yes, you named a few of them. Like the D20, of course. The D6 exists, the D4 exists, which might as well just be called caltrops. Like it's literally just looks like a pyramid. And it's pointed up. And if you drop that on the floor, I hope your eyes find it before your foot does.
True.
Normally used. There's also the D8 and 8-sided die. The D12, a 12-sided die. There's also the D10, which usually come in a pair. Like you roll them together if you want to do a percentile roll. Like their numbers are marked differently, and I'm not going to explain exactly how that works, but
no, we don't have to go into that detail.
You basically do that.
I don't even understand 90% of that one.
You basically do that if you want to. Like you basically do that to come up with both digits of a percentage or what have you. I've seen an actual D100, which is the other thing you would call percentile die. Like I've seen an actual D100. Yeah, it's basically this big ball, and I'm just like, how? I mean, cool, but how on earth are you supposed to use that in any meaningful manner?
Where do you determine what's the top? That's the thing. Is like you need to almost have it where it's lighted, and it just lights up that one number at the top.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I've never seen it in person, so I mean, I'd love to be able to tell you. I mean, I'd love to know that myself, but I'm mostly just thinking. For me, that's kind of like in that whole like cool but impractical sort of thing.
Yeah, every there's always going to be that one little extra little step out there that's interesting, but at the same time, like, wow, that's another level.
Yeah,
that's way another level. Now, and do you have a favorite set of dice? Everybody has like, oh yeah, I've got this metal one. I've got this one that's like neon green. Do you have a favorite set of dice?
You know, I think the honest answer to that one is yes, but if you know me at all, trying to pin down any one thing as my favorite anything is almost impossible. Mostly because I never want to admit to it, and I never want to stay locked into it. Yeah. I just want to like stay locked into something, But I mean, that said, I've got probably between us, we probably have at least like 20 sets of dice and everything. I did get this really cool set of rainbow dice at a local game store that we hopped into just recently. It was new to us. We hadn't been there before, and they had these really awesome rainbow dice. So I was just like, hell yes, I'm gonna go get that.
You're gonna have to show us to him next time whenever we're playing. I look forward to kind of seeing this.
The store is Dungeons Gate in Ankeny, Iowa. If you're ever in the area, by the way, you should go give them a look. Cool.
Now more plugs here. Now, gosh, sponsorships here. Come on, guys. I need a little bit of money back. This is not a free ride, okay? Even though I think I pay like $40, $50 a month to continue running this podcast, but hobbies are expensive. That's kind of part of it.
Aren't they?
But I love it. I love every bit of this. Let's go into your story. We got a little bit of outline here. We laid down some basic ground rules in that sense. I want to hear about you, Kalevi, and your time role playing. How long have you been playing?
Yeah, well, let me think about that one. So I've kind of had 2 entries into the hobby, actually. Once was back in undergrad, actually, like when I was still in undergrad at the University of Idaho, Moscow, Idaho. Back in Moscow, I had some friends who definitely were into playing D&D. I think at the time that would have been, I think 4th edition was out, I think maybe, but they were almost certainly playing playing a 3.5 edition. In any case, I did play a game or two or three with them, I think, at the time, and I don't remember much about it or like my particular character at the time or anything, but I was like, okay, this is cool, this is fun, but but of course, I was in a different place in my life at the time, and I was also just like, well, when it came to combat, I was just like, all right, I'm just sitting here waiting, and I'm also need to keep some idea of what's going on at the same time, and it's a lot to keep track of, and dear God, like it's 21-year-old Kalevi is just like not very not super good at keeping his attention focused on long-term activities like that. A whole bunch of like hurry up and wait type stuff. So I fell away from it for a while, and then I was gonna say once my husband Garrison, once he moved up to Des Moines here, like I said, I think it was about 2019 or so. Like another group of his friends back from UGA had decided to get a game going, and they asked him if he wanted to play with them, and he said, "Yeah, sure." And he told me about it, and I'm like, "Hey, I'm in on this. Like, I'll give it a shot." And so basically, and that time around, of course, we started with fifth edition and fun, and those Lost Mines of Phandelver, and from there, that's where that's where that started for me. So I think we've been in here almost wow, it feels like it's been forever, but it hasn't been that long. Actually, I've only been around like about 4 years or so. Wow.
Hey,
Yeah.
time flies as we're getting older. It just kind of feels like it's speeding up a little bit more and more.
Oh yeah.
That's college is a good introduction on being able to kind of get in there and doing a bunch of different things. I never played in college. I had a bunch of friends that did, but I didn't. I never got into it. There were some things that I guess hit there and some things that didn't, and that one missed. But I'm glad. I'm glad that Chris and them have done it for over all the years and finally drug us into it. And it's been a ball. It's definitely something different. I'm so confused every time, and I always forget what's going on at certain points. So I always lean over. My wife is playing in the campaign with us, and I'm like, Katie, what's happening right now? What's the name of that thing? I can't remember that. And right now, my brother Corey and I, our characters are just like always trying to kill each other because me and Corey, my brother, are just fire and ice when it comes to doing character work and stuff. And it's fun messing with him. It's just that's just brother love right there.
Oh yeah,
that's just the way that kind of
goes. Back and forth, as if you've never done it before, right?
Oh, exactly. Never ever has my brother punched me in the face and broke my glasses, or never have I pushed Corey over and like kicked him in the side or something like that while he's down. Never, never, not at all. Oh gosh, you gotta love it. So, did you ever play back in the day on PlayStation 1? Did you ever play Final Fantasy or any of those RPG games?
Oh, of course I did. Of course I did.
Again, that still counts as RPGs.
Yep. I mean, it's a different type of role-playing game altogether, but yes, of course, that's where I started. Actually, like well, I would have known it at the time, Final Fantasy 2, like on Super Nintendo, but Final Fantasy 4, that was my first one, my first RPG, and it still has a special place in my heart. It and all of its remakes, I should say.
Yeah, they've done a good job of remaking them and bringing them back. It was very interesting. That was one that slipped through Nintendo's hands. If they made it, they had it, and it wasn't a good seller for them. And then Sony just sweeps right in and picks it up, and it carries on as one of the best selling franchises for them on PlayStation entirely.
Yep.
Sorry, Nintendo, you gave up a good one.
And yet they
were more focused
over the years too. There's just been also a lot of nostalgia for those older games and everything, and so they've been able to come back, bring those back, and still do really well with them and everything. I mean, like Final Fantasy VI is still considered, like, I'd say it's one of the game's masterpieces and everything. The last really big Super Nintendo game, and then of course Final Fantasy VII was the one that kind of like swept everyone over.
Definitely the cult classic that pops up. Corey played Chrono Cross. Chrono Cross. Yeah, and then he also played Legends of Dragoon. Yeah, those are the two that he played heavily and beat through.
Yes.
Yeah, Corey beat through that one, and that's one of the only. I played 7. I tried. I have no attention span for playing long term on games. It just doesn't happen for me. I do good playing like sports games where I know there's a beginning and there's an end. I can make that work.
I was gonna say I've watched you play a long time on Super Punch Out, so
Yes, that I can do. It's short term. Short term. It works. I did that for your guys' bachelor party. That was fun. I
yeah,
enjoyed playing that.
yeah.
That the little boxes where they made all the games, combined it into one. That was smart. That was really good when they did that stuff. It really condensed things rather than having the giant console and having to go into the games
Yeah.
and shove it back in the console and hoping that the cartridge actually worked. Or crap, the disc is scratched. No, no, it definitely works. It definitely does. I know you play other games as well and stuff like online as well with doing that. Do you prefer playing tabletop, like in person kind of deal, or do you prefer doing like online role playing games? Like which one do you prefer better?
Um, Let me see. So just to clarify, when are you saying like are we basically like talking about like like online video games versus online role playing or okay.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, exactly. Like, would you rather play Final Fantasy, those role playing games, or would you rather play D&D?
sure.
I'm going to call that
Sure.
tabletop.
Okay, cool. Gotcha. Um, Honestly, I am always down to play a tabletop game. Nearly always. Like I think I enjoy that more because it's partially like it's partially a matter of like the fact that we're making the story up ourselves as we go, and it's also a fact of like that's just a thing that you get to do with other people really easily and everything. So, I mean, if I had to make a choice, I would definitely go with tabletop for sure. But that said, there's a lot to be said for playing solo with other games. Like it helps me keep get my self time as it goes too. So I just try to carve out some time.
Do you ever do like World of Warcraft or any
You
of
know
those?
what? No, actually, I never was and never have been like a really big MMORPG player. Like for some reason that just isn't my speed, and I don't quite understand it in a way that I could explain it. But yeah, no, that's like I've always been aware of WoW. I've always been aware of like League of Legends and stuff, but I've just never really been interested in playing it.
That's fair. Have several friends that just got dive deep into it and lost them for like 5 years and then they come out from the basement with like this giant massive beard and you're and weighing like 200 pounds heavier and you're like, where have you been? There's sunlight outside. Like, but any game could suck you in and take you long term on that stuff. But World
Oh
of
yeah.
Warcraft sucked so many people in for a long time and that, but it is what it is. Now you said you've only played a couple of campaigns, right?
A couple of like I
Over
have
the
a couple
years.
of like complete campaigns or so. Yeah, yeah. Like um I've only basically finished two campaigns that I can think of, and we're just about to finish a third.
Gotcha. Whenever you're playing a campaign, do you have a favorite character or class that you like to be able to build your character around?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. Honestly, if I'm getting back to my roots on things, like I started fifth edition as a druid, and I think a druid is always going to be my favorite one. Like then the nature magic thing, the shape shifting. Oh my god, the shape shifting is my favorite part. I do really love playing. I do really love playing Circle of the Moon, which is the one that has the really powerful shape shifting that you can actually use in combat and stuff. Like that was the character I was playing in our one homebrew game that we finished. And oh my god, we had so many fun times around that. Um because one time my reaction to a situation while we were trying to get away was basically to wild shape or to turn into an elk and just run out the door, knock the door down in the process. And of course that only happened one time, but ever since that time, like my party kept making jokes about me going panic elk.
Panic Elk. I love
Yep.
it. I love it.
Like, oh shit, here we go.
What was the one of Leroy
Oh yeah.
Jenkins. We'll just, that whole thing within Minecraft. We'll just panic elk, run, smash the door, running out. Oh well, that's funny. I'll have to try to remember that for our next campaign, not camp, but the next time we're in session to be like,
Yeah.
oh, you can't shapeshift into your panic elk. No, can't do it. It'll be a nice little inside joke that I'll know about. Yes, I
Yes.
don't know about the inside jokes that often.
Well, welcome.
Yay. If you're brand new to the game, now you've been playing for a little while, you're looking back on your whole experience that you've been playing now for a little while, and you're talking to yourself from the very beginning of time to where you currently are. What are some things that you would tell somebody that's like new coming into the game? Hey, you need to do this, or hey, you need to look into that. Like advice that you would give someone who's starting to get into role playing games.
Okay. Okay.
I'm really wordy. That was really terrible. I could probably shorten that down to what's some words of advice that you would give a new player. Man, I'm so terrible about that.
Goodness sakes. Nah, it's good. It's good. I got you now. But um honestly, honestly, this is gonna sound a little bit unintuitive, I think, or counterintuitive maybe, but at least when it comes to the actual role play portion of things, like do have an idea of like your character, their backstory, their personality, but especially on the question of personality, don't overplan things. I find I've had characters too, characters where I've jumped in with a vague idea of what they might be like or how they might act, and I've had characters where I have a fairly well defined idea of like how they might act in certain situations or what have you. Invariably with every character I've ever played, the image of their personality that I have and the actual personality that comes out while playing end up being different, whether that's totally different or just moderately, it tends to vary. But all that to say, it's like you don't need to necessarily come in with an entirely mapped out plan and stick absolutely to it in the beginning. Like you should have some idea of what you're gonna do, but in a way, like a character is a persona in your own mind, and you're kind of just giving a voice and well, I guess you could say a very metaphysical type body to it or what have you, and they're going to do what they're going to do for the most part. So it's just be aware of that. Circumstances in the game might also change, and might change how your character develops or puts their actions into things, and of course that's fine, and that's natural. Like that's just development, and we love to see it. I'd also say, like, while I'm a little bit less of a numbers guy, I would say it's at the same time, it's like when you're thinking about ability scores and all those other fun things, like do pace. You don't need to optimize your character to perform absolutely mathematically the best in any situation by any means. I mean, unless you want to, then by all means, do that. Just don't go overboard and annoy the people you're playing with. But have at least some idea of what things work best where, as far as your ability scores go, I mean, it may not be the main reason you're playing, or it may not be the main focus that of anyone playing in your game, but it can have an effect on how like the game plays for you. So do the reading, do the research on that one, and do what makes sense for what you're trying to do with a character.
Fair play. And the DM is going to be always smarter than you. So if you do something you're not supposed to do, they're going to fix it and cut you right at your knees pretty quickly. So good job, Chris, on keeping some of our people in check. Like, you really can't do that? Yeah, I'm going to let it slide this time. But yeah. So, that's like, I kind of love that when that kind of pops up there. Whenever there's like pause, roll check.
Yeah.
And you've been a good job of giving us a lot of good roll checks as well. Like you have done a phenomenal job at that, because I'm sitting there going, I have no idea. And it's like, and Chris will go, Kalevi, maybe? No? What are your thoughts? So Chris is a phenomenal GM. Like I have my first person getting that in. Yay. Now, is there anything, like, we're going to wrap up here on this because we're hitting close to an hour, and I want to be respectful of your time. in our listeners' time because they don't want to go on for 2 hours just randomly rambling. It's fun, but you always got to be respectful of the listener here. Are there any things that I haven't covered that you kind of want to bring up or mention when it comes to Dungeons and Dragons or role
Um,
playing in general?
there's a couple things I can think of. One is kind of a word of warning slash an axiom just to think of while you're playing, and another one is just a general sort of thing. Like I'll start with that. I'll start with the axiom here, and you'll hear it a lot.
Do
So
it.
it's no D&D is better than bad D&D. It's if you find yourself in a game that you're uncomfortable with, or with a group that you're not comfortable in, if you've talked to them to try to resolve issues and things are just not getting better, if you're not having a good time, if you're not having fun, or if you're actively being, God forbid, you're actively being made to feel unsafe or what have you, do not be afraid to bow out and walk away. You gotta do you gotta look out for yourself while you're doing things like you're doing. Role playing can be a very vulnerable activity depending on how you do
Yes.
it. It
Yes,
very
it
it
can.
very easy. Yeah, it can be that very easily. And if you feel that you're getting put into a position where you're going to get hurt and the people around you aren't listening to you when you try to negotiate to stake your own space out and everything, then by all means, please, for your own sake, if for no other reason, like step away. That's exactly what it says. No D&D is better than bad D&D.
Good words of advice. That's just good life advice
Yeah, yeah, for
in
sure.
general.
For sure, absolutely. The only other thing I can think of too is like that said, when it comes to having fun with tabletop games and everything, just let loose. Be mindful of other people's boundaries around you and what you've all agreed to, as far as what you will play with at a table. But other than that, let loose, have fun, do all of the things you normally wouldn't do in your normal life because this isn't your normal life. Just get out there and play and have all the fun you want to have in your make believe world with your friends.
Nice. Well said. Now I feel like that kind of skips over one of my next questions that I always ask towards the end of what's some life advice you like to give? Because that's like solid life advice as well. So it kind of hits two nails at once, like da da da. Just kind of knocks it out there. Two birds with one stone, that kind of range. Outside of the realm of D&D, is there anything that you would like to say to the audience, open forum, just in general, right now? It could be anything. It could be life advice. It could be, hey, I'm really into this right now. Hey, look, support so and so and their next endeavor. Hey, I'm about to do this. Look me up on such and such.com. I don't know. Just little things like that.
Sure. Well, funny enough, you caught me off guard on that one.
I know I do that with a lot of people, and sometimes it's fun to see how they put it on the spot. What
Sure,
happens?
sure. Well, I'm going to spare you all my rant about using imperial volume measurements instead of metric mass measurements in baking. I'll spare you all my rant on that one. So, I guess get a kitchen scale. Get out there and do something kind for someone else. Get out there and do one kind thing for yourself before you go to bed tonight. And
Nice.
support Cade. Listen to Cade. Cade is awesome. You should definitely keep him in your ears.
Aw, look at you. The invoice me. I will send you a check in the mail for that one not too long from now. I knew that was coming. Darn. There goes another $5 down the drain. Thank you for those kind words. I deeply appreciate that. And we're not too long from now, in a couple of weeks, I'll have you back on for another episode that I'm excited to get to talk to you on of a different topic.
Yeah.
Just to kind of as a teaser, Kalevi's coming back. We're gonna have him for a part 2 of not Dungeons and Dragons, role playing or anything, but different type of topic. The what?
The what?
But thank you, Kalevi. I deeply appreciate you coming on and spending your time this afternoon. I know it's it's on a Tuesday. We're sitting here recording, and you're getting off of work and coming in. I came home from work and doing that, and that's just the most precious gift you can give somebody is your time because it's limited. So
Agreed.
Thank you.
Agreed. Absolutely. Anytime.
Now, as we leave out here, if you have any questions or comments, Leave your comments to be PG and kind and courteous, because again, we're just amateurs talking about this stuff here. And when it comes to it, so don't critique us 100% on saying, oh, well, you didn't say this or that. We're amateurs. We're just having fun. We're having a conversation. We're learning from friends. But if you'd like to reach out to me through email, my email is Cade, which is spelled CADE, at learningfromfriends.com. There's also a link here at the bottom of the description for you if you want to do it that way. I'm on Facebook. I have a Twitter page. I don't post that often, other than, hey, look, here's the link to this week's episode, and maybe a little thing here and there, just because of I teach. I'm all over the place, and I'm a man of many things, the master of none, but the curiosity of many. There we go. I always throw that one off there. And also, if you'd like to donate, I have a Patreon page. I would love to have any bits of donation that's come back into it, even if it's $1 or it's $1,000, or if you're feeling very generous, I'll take millions. Like, I'm just saying, I'll take it all, whatever you're willing to offer. So as we're wrapping up here, my name is Cade Curtis, your tour guide on this lovely adventure I like to call Learning from Friends. And most of all, don't forget to let your curiosity fly high.